On New Year's Eve, electricity rate caps will be removed for about 80,000 York County Med-Ed customers. About 10% of the county has already experienced rate cap removal when PPL went through the process last December 31st. The York Dispatch went exploring in PPL territory, which includes pockets of customers in areas such as Wrightsville and Hellam and Lower Windsor townships. What we found was that despite the 30% increase in PP&L rates, a majority of the customers didn't switch to an alternative supplier that could have saved them about 10%. Even those with the most at stake, businesses that pay hundreds or thousands of dollars per month, were apprehensive about companies competing for their business. At Wrightsville's Sue's Market, owner Sue Myers was so compelled to stay with PPL, she misled telemarketers for alternative suppliers by telling them she had already switched. Nearby, bike shop owner Jason Blome is saving about $360 per year with an alternative supplier. But he said he probably wouldn't have switched if he hadn't been badgered by salespeople. Salon owner Lisa Carr was the sole business owner we found on the day of our visit who embraced the change. Though her electric bill is considerably higher this year than last, she said she was happy she switched to a company that saves her about 10% of the increase she would have seen if she had stayed with PPL. Med-Ed customers in York have a choice to make, and it's about as simple as a flick of a switch. We are at Sue's Market with Sue Myers, who owns Sue's Market. Sue, you said you pay about $2,200 a month for your electricity. How did you prepare for the rate cap removal with PP&L?
Well, I knew they were going up, and I just started when I purchased the building 2 years ago from the former owners. They had old equipment, so I was fortunate enough to buy some newer stuff to keep my costs down, because the equipment that was in the store was 70 to 80 years old. So I wanted to get more efficient equipment so my prices wouldn't go up so high. I seen an increase about $300.
After the rate cap removal?
Yes.
Standing with Jason Blome, who's the owner of Cycle Works at 206 Hellam Street in Wrightsville. Jason, you decided to switch electricity suppliers for your store. Why?
I guess about 2 months after the cap came off, we were starting to see the rates increase through PP&L. And at that point, we were being just barraged with calls from suppliers wanting us to transfer our business through them. So at that point, just to kind of put an end to all the calls, we started looking more diligently into different pricing from suppliers, and ended up choosing a supplier that had a pretty good rate versus what we were paying as PP&L's rates increased.
We're with Lisa Carr, who is the owner of Impressions Hair Styling Salon. Lisa, why did you decide to switch electric suppliers after the rate caps came off last year?
I was just comparing apples to apples with the different companies, and there's ones that had hidden costs and stuff like that as well. So I just kind of did some homework on each company through the computer and stuff, and then from that point, then I had to decide which one would be better for me. I have a business as well as a residential, and they were both going up at the same time, and I didn't want to have two different other providers. I wanted to have the same provider, so I had problems, I can kind of work them together.
Why did you decide to stay with PP&L as opposed to shopping for a different supplier?
Because they were always good to me. I never had a problem with PP&L. I figured, why get rid of something that I never had a problem with.
At the end of the year, when the rate caps came off, how much did your electricity bill, which you said you pay about $300 a month, how much did that increase?
They were telling us we might see up to 20% or more. We ended up only seeing maybe 15% increase on our bill. So yeah, it didn't seem to be quite as bad as they were projecting.
So you were not very motivated to switch suppliers, and it sounds like you probably wouldn't have if people hadn't been pursuing you as a customer?
Yeah. If the rates had continued to rise as they had started, we surely would have looked into it, but initially with a relatively small increase comparatively. We weren't that motivated. Mostly, like I said, it was just to stop phone calls from suppliers.
So here at your salon, you have a lot of blowers, and you have, obviously air conditioning and hair dryers and all sorts of things you're running. How much was your bill this year compared to last year?
Last year was like $450, $465, and this year it's a little over $600.
Do you think you could have saved money by switching to a different company?
Probably in the long run, maybe, but then I heard different people say that their rates, even with switching, that they actually went up anyhow.
That they offered a low introductory rate and then it increased?
Yeah, that's what I heard.
So you're saving now about $360 per year, or about 10% of what you would have been paying with PP&L. Was it worth it to make the switch? Was it a big hassle?
Yeah, it was very simple. The provider we chose actually had our sales rep come by our store, so it was certainly nice to be able to talk with him face to face, and be able to sit down and look at our rates, and look at his rates, and look at other providers' rates. So the process was pretty easy. Maybe 3 or 4 pages of very simple paperwork to fill out, and he pretty much handled everything. So yeah, it's pretty straightforward.
How much would you estimate you're saving because you switched from PP&L?
Well, what they told me was my kilowatts is 9.8. What the kilowatts that would have been with PP&L was above 15. So, but there's so many things involved in even the bill, and trying to break down the kilowatts to the usage of in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening and stuff. And they said that none of that was going to be really nothing was going to change at that point. It was going to be one straight fee. But when you get the bill, it's still different things on there,
So would you say it's a confusing process?
Yes. I thought it would be a little bit easier to understand it, because that's what I got out of Liberty, saying that you can understand it a lot better than you would with PP&Ls, because they had all these different time zones of peaks and off peaks and stuff like that, but they still do the same thing.
Constantly, every day, 6, 7 phone calls a day, sometimes more, from different energy companies trying to get you to switch, or they're in the neighborhood talking to other people, and can we stop in and just show you what we have? And I said, no, I'm not interested, or I tell a fib and say I've already switched, because it was just overwhelming. It'll be overwhelming.
If you had realized that you could have saved that amount of money, from the beginning, would you have done some research yourself, or would you? Is it worth it?
Yeah, probably. We probably would have looked into it one way or the other. We were able to lock into maybe a 3-year term at the rate with the supplier we went with, which is Liberty Power. I felt we ended up with a pretty good rate that right now, at least when we signed the contract with them, was an attractive rate, and I guess they're suggesting that PP&L's rates are going to continue to increase, so hopefully that pays off even more 3 years down the road.
So why did you switch initially? Why did you start researching companies?
Because I knew P&L was going to be more than the rest of them.
Are you is your contract fixed? Do you have a fixed rate?
I have a fixed rate for a year. Yes.
So you signed a contract for 1 year?
Yes.
And the rate stays the same for that time?
That is correct.